Hi everybody, David Wesley here, and I am in the middle of my final week as a YouTuber. This past Saturday I released 2 albums, Overwhelmed, Songs of Praise, and Can It Be, Songs of Salvation. They're available on all major music services and my new Bandcamp page. You can check the video description for the links. And thanks to the generous people that have already jumped on board in just the first 3 days of those releases, I've broken even from the considerable expense I had putting those out, so thank you very much. And then next Saturday coming up will be my final a cappella music video, which will be my way of saying goodbye to you. But for right now, I need to circle back to something I mentioned in my retirement video, and that was about a ministry opportunity that I wanted to present you with. Now, I've had the great blessing of being supported by a very generous group of people on Patreon all the way back to January 2018. And these people believed in what I was doing. You know, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a missionary. I guess you could say I'm a kind of musical missionary on the internet. But they believed enough in what I was doing to donate to me, to help me cover my expenses and grant me the time to do this work. And that is, I'm not a registered charity. This is without any kind of tax receipt or any tax incentives for that. So that makes it even more generous. Now that that's coming to an end, some of my patrons wished to kind of carry forward in some way, but it didn't really make sense to me to go forward. So what I wanted to do was to try to point them and to you in the direction of something that I think is quite worthwhile. So the last 2 summers, I actually spent a week as the worship leader in residence at Elam Lodge, which is a Christian campground, conference center, trailer park, about 25 minutes away from my house in the middle of cottage country. And for each week of the summer, they actually focus on a different ministry and have offerings towards that ministry. The work of the ministry is shared so people can have an idea of what's going on. And the people that attend the camp and the conferences were quite generous each week with that. It just so happened that the 2 weeks that I was in charge of for 2023 and this year, it was the same organization that was Youth for Christ. And this year the focus was on trying to raise support for a few new workers that were coming on board. Coming out of COVID, for a lot of churches and ministries was quite difficult. So it's a real time of turnover. The Kawartha chapter of Youth for Christ, which is closest to me, is they have an interim director and they have a lot of new people coming on board. Now, the model that they use for paying staff salaries is that people like missionaries, Youth for Christ workers have to raise their own support. So that can be done through, family, friends, church, networking, and whatnot. But it can be quite challenging. And Youth for Christ Kawartha, part of the money that was raised during my week as a worship leader was to just provide general funding so that they could start in their positions without having full support. So they're covered for a period of time while they're still working on that. It was during that week that I kind of came to my final decision that I was going to retire from YouTube. I hadn't told anybody. And after the half-hour or so presentation from the interim director, I got up to lead a final song, just to kind of challenge people to really consider partnering with this financially with the ministry if they could. And I said that I was going to retire from YouTube and that I was going to try to direct my patrons and anyone else towards one of these new Youth for Christ workers in particular, and that one was Alan Lewis. And this wasn't meant as like a spiritual flex or anything. Like, it's not my money. I was going to be finishing off on YouTube anyway, but I wanted to try to make my exit bless somebody. I'm kind of leaving ministry. I'm leaving what has been sort of a trusting in God period of uncertainty into something that I think will be more stable for my family. Alan is doing the opposite. He's going from a good job and security kind of into the unknown, into the realm of trusting God, and raising your own financial support is obviously a daunting task that requires some faith. So Alan is originally from Guyana. He is married, and he is the father of 2 young girls. And he currently works in a management position, doing leadership development for a large tech company that I can't name, that has some retail locations in the Toronto area. But he, in developing these leadership and coaching skills, really felt that this is where his spiritual gift lies, and he wanted to apply those skills in ministry. He's moved to a tiny village outside of the town of Lindsay, about a half hour, 40 minutes away from me, and he's connected with a small church there. He's actually preached on occasion there. He's really stepped forward, and going into the position of the Lindsay community director for Youth for Christ in Lindsay is sort of that ultimate step of faith, where he'll be having to rely on the generosity of others to do this work. Now, the ministry that Youth for Christ Kawartha does is quite diverse. You can actually go to their website to find out everything that they do, but there's lots of after school outreach and drop-ins, and it's all very focused on discipleship and evangelism. They really do some great work. In the video description, I will send you to a page where you can check out the Ministry of Youth for Christ, the Kawartha chapter, and as well, I will try to share a letter of support, a letter requesting support from Alan, as well as sort of a letter of recommendation from his director that is kind of vouching for what he sees as God's call on Alan's life. So yeah, as I wrap up my ministry, it would mean a great deal to me if as many people as possible could take their generosity and their enthusiasm that they've given towards me and give it to somebody doing real ministry. I'm sure Alan would be very grateful. Again, all the links needed to do that will be in the video description, and patrons, I'll post that all in a Patreon post that'll be publicly available. All right, thank you very much. God bless. Again, my last music video is coming out on Saturday.